So this is an example of an arpiera, which is a type of quilt that my project was centered around and is what I studied while I was in Chile. These quilts started in Chile under the dictatorship. They were made by women on the outskirts of Santiago, particularly those who were the husband's brother, or particularly those who had husbands, brothers, sons who had been disappeared by the military dictatorship that had taken over. And I learned about these quilts sort of through thinking that I wanted to apply for a Fulbright. So for me, I really started with being interested in I started getting interested in grants and the idea of like different ways of sustaining myself and work and as a working artist. I think my junior year at RISD was the first time I met with Lisa. And I sort of walked in one like a really casual meeting. We talked for a while, we looked at different country pages. Um, I was really interested in applying to Lebanon because that's where my family's from, but you had to know Arabic or French, which I did not at all. And then I kind of let it go and didn't think that much about it, I think, again, for a little while. But then Lisa and I met again. We started talking more. I looked into Hungary because that was a place that did not have a language requirement, but had a lot of folks from Syria and Lebanon. Like I said, the two places my family was from. But then I started realizing that I wanted to go somewhere where I spoke the language. So I either wanted to go somewhere English speaking or Spanish speaking, the two languages I speak. So we sort of started going down different country pages. And then we got to Chile, and I realized that one of my best friends from RISD was from Chile, and he might have some insights for me just about like the culture, about the art, about things I could look to apply for. And he's the one who first told me about arpieras. He said that he thought they might align with my work and my interests because they were sort of this form of subversive textiles. A lot of the work I make is about concepts of home, and both from like a personal and a political perspective, and using textiles in sort of these kind of subversive ways. So he was like, oh, you should start looking into these. And then I became absolutely obsessed with them. And I was like, okay, all the things are kind of coming together. Like Chile had a higher success rate than other parts of Latin America as far as Fulbright stats went. Um, and I loved these quilts. And then also my friend was able to sort of give me, he was the one who helped introduce me to some of my affiliates. He reached out to a friend of his from high school who had worked with this museum. That was one of my affiliates. And then he also was able to be like, oh, you should look at this university rather than this one. Um, and then I did some cold emailing. I emailed an artist, Cecilia Vicuña, who works between New York and Chile, and she um, is works only very skeptically with Americans that she kind of already knows. So it ended up not being I ended up actually getting to meet her while I was in Chile, and someone else was doing a project with her, but she wanted to have a longer relationship than sort of the timeline for applying allowed. So that's a little bit about my like application sort of background. And another thing is that I went into Lisa's office junior year, which was 2017. I don't think I hit submit until 2021. The pandemic really gave me extra time to work on an application because when I was graduating, I just felt like too overwhelmed to think about it. And then I started in 2020, and then I again was like, couldn't get it together. And it wasn't until 2021 that I really felt that I was able to. And I submitted and really didn't think I would get it. And then I became a semifinalist and became incredibly invested in getting it. And then did not become a finalist that year, and was devastated, but decided to reapply again. I thought, why not? And then the next time I applied, I did get it. So the thing about Chile, it's in the southern hemisphere, which means that we had a March start date because their school year runs from March to November, as opposed to from September to June. And so I found out I got a Fulbright in April, and then I didn't start until the following March. And I found out I got a Fulbright right as I had decided that I was going to live in New York and really put down roots. So the world just kind of like laughs whenever you make plans. And so I had a long time before I actually started the grant, and somehow I like feel that I didn't really know what to expect, and people kept telling me like this is going to be amazing, this is going to be life-changing, you're going to have the best time. So my solution to hearing all of that was, rather than getting excited and invested, was just not thinking about it. I felt like I did a little bit of more research, but I really kind of came to Chile like not really knowing what. I knew what my project was. I knew that I was going there to study arpieras to get inspiration for a new body of work, but I didn't really know what else I was getting into. Um, and so once I arrived, as you can see on this photo on the left, I sort of tried to do anytime someone invited me to something or I heard about something, I would go. These were these free workshops that I found out about through the university I was studying with, or that was one of my affiliates. I can also back up a little and say that I had two affiliates, a museum and a university. The university I was taking classes with. And the museum, I was kind of just getting to go through the collection, and then I ended up helping run workshops. Um, those my two contacts there, even though my friend had helped get me some of those connections, really were reaching out kind of cold or like lukewarm, if you will. They weren't people that I had existing relationships prior to applying. So I spent a lot of time in different sort of crafting circles, which felt kind of like it went along with the artwork that I was studying, but also was with my interest. But then um, like also was a little just like a way for me to hang out with people and make friends. Another thing about my experience with Fulbright is I was taking like two classes and then going to the museum. I only had to be there once a week, so I had a lot of free time. And so the beginning of my Fulbright was incredibly overwhelming, because I just had all this free time and I knew this was this really special experience, but I just felt like it was a lot of pressure. And that led me to reach out a lot to my cohort, which you see in both of these photos. And they were amazing. And the other thing that was great about reaching out to my cohort is that as I made more Chilean friends, my cohort also made more Chilean friends. And so I was able to connect with even more folks that I wouldn't have necessarily otherwise. So one of my friends in this photo was studying girls' soccer and public health, and I would never have met the women that she worked with. And they ended up being like some really, really good friends of mine. So we had a way of, I feel like if you can connect with your cohort, both they're the only people that will really understand what you're going through, and then also they can help connect you further to the culture that you're um, engaging with. And then I think the longer, once I started reaching out to people, going to these crafting circles, spending time with my cohort, I started getting a little more comfortable. The other thing I did to sort of help organize my days, because some of them felt like I was like, wow, I have so much time. What can I do with this opportunity? Was that I joined the public pool, which was a whole saga, but they had really specific hours, and that helped me sort of strategize my time. And that was really something that ended up being really helpful and amazing. Um, and so now we'll go into what my project ended up turning into. I think I said this earlier. I said that I was going to make a community quilt based on the quilts I was studying. I knew that I wasn't totally sold on that idea because I was really worried that it would be this American coming to Chile, sort of appropriating this craft that had existed since the 70s. So I ended up kind of taking inspiration in the way that I went about making work, and then also from my physical landscape. When I first got to Chile, which happens in a lot of parts of Latin America, people will tell you, and also I guess in New York, people have been telling me this, but regardless, people will be like, wow, the city is so much more dangerous than it used to be, which was a really scary thing to hear when you're moving to a foreign country, is constantly being told that you're in danger, even if you don't necessarily feel in danger. And that led me to notice a lot of these sort of more colorful or elaborate gates, or window bars that I saw everywhere. And as I sort of started realizing that there was a lot of propaganda that came with that statement, about like how dangerous places were, I was still sort of inspired by thinking about like what is safety and how it relates to safety of a home. Home being, again, a central part of my practice, or what makes me feel safe and how that relates to my concepts of home. So I started collecting photos of these different gates and window bars that I would see. And then I started making originally kind of exact replicas of them in thread. And I did that in my studio. You can kind of see some tiny ones. They were sort of my little like samples on the wall. A lot of my cohort were scientists, and the way that they approached their Fulbright was that they were there to collect research, not to write their papers. And I found that really inspiring to be like, I'm here to get inspired and start new things. I'm not here, even though I said I was going to finish a body of work, it's the time to get inspired and try and experiment more than it's the time to finish everything that I started. So this is me in my studio in Chile. Another thing is that I said I was going to get studio space through the school. The school really said, like, we'll give you studio space if we have time. I mean, if we have space, and they did not. So I ended up having to find one independently. But a lot of the work that I started there, I'm still doing in my studio here, and I'm sort of continuing these bar embroideries that were inspired and started there. Um, and yeah, I'm sort of working on them kind of like a quilt in these sort of piecemeal ways. Other things that have happened to me since I got back is that I've gotten a lot more teaching opportunities. I definitely realized while I was in Fulbright that I wanted more consistent but also flexible work because my Spanish, I taught these workshops in Spanish in Chile, so that has been really helpful. I'm starting to think about grad school. And feel that I am starting a body of work that is really ready for that next step. But yeah, I think I'm not sure if I took too much time, but I just want to give folks time to ask questions, and I also want to hear about Ben's experience.